So there are 115 waiting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a webinar we're doing for pastors, exclusively for the Calvary Chapel Association. My name is Robert Tyler. My law partner, Jennifer Bursch, is going to be on as well. We are from Tyler and Bursch, as well as Advocates for Faith and Freedom, which is our nonprofit arm of our law firm. And I'm sure I know many of you that are on, but I don't see who's on. I'm told we'll have quite a few pastors here from Calvary. We have an online poll that I think you can see it up on your screen right now. So love it if you would click on it and let us know. It looks like a number of you have done the polling so far, about 22 of you. This is very helpful to us. We'd really like to see what you're doing. So we will give just a few more minutes or a few more seconds here. My understanding is we've had a number of folks sign up, but let me get started. I represent, or my firm and Jen and Advocates for Faith and Freedom, we represent a number of Calvary chapels. We are a law firm that specializes in representing churches as general counsel. And we are presently involved in a lot of litigation as it pertains to COVID-19 and churches and your right to be able to continue meeting indoors without the pressure from the government, or I should say at least without the unreasonable restrictions that the government has put on us. So today, what I really wanted to do is try to bring you up to speed. We had a conference, a Zoom conference, I think it was maybe about a week or a week and a half ago. And Don McClure had asked us if he could send it out to the Calvary Chapel Association network, and he did, but at the time we only had 100 capacity for people on our Zoom, and didn't realize it. So we're told that there are a lot of pastors who were not able to get on, and so we're doing this as a second effort to just try to accommodate particularly the Calvary Chapel Association. So we are honored to be talking to you and helping you. You can always contact us if you have any questions. Our websites, I'll ask Jake to put them into the chat. And in the chat, there will be our website for Tyler and Bursch, which is our private law firm. That's generally where we make a living doing business, corporate, general counsel work for churches and nonprofits. And then we also have our nonprofit side of the practice. That's called Advocates for Faith and Freedom. That's faith-freedom.com. And that will go up in the chat as well. And you can contact us through those websites. And that will be, we should be able to get back to you pretty quick. Let me just give out our phone number as well. If you have any emergencies, any issues where you need some help, you can contact our office at, I'll give you the toll-free number. It's 888-588-6888. That'll go in the chat as well, okay? It's a bunch of eights, 888-588-6888. Okay, so we're going to launch. I've also asked Don McClure Jr., who provides insurance to, I'm sure, a lot of you, a lot of churches. He specializes in handling church insurance, and I know that's a question for many pastors. So let me just let me launch with one more thing. Sorry, a little more house cleanup here. Just if you have any questions, please type them up in the chat, and we will be able to answer those questions. I'm sorry, I got a. Oh, there's a Q&A. So I'm assuming it's easy to get to. Down on the bottom, there's looks like there's a tab that says Q&A, and it looks like we might have one question there. Jake, he's our producer here, so to speak. In the chat, is there a separate chat that's available as well? Okay. All right. So there's two different windows, one for chat and one's a Q&A. So put your questions into the Q&A if you don't mind. Okay. Interesting to see so far on our questionnaire indoors, 90% of 31 individuals who have responded are saying you're meeting indoors. Interesting. Okay. So let's first talk about, I want to bring up the recent cases. Now, the United States Supreme Court came out a few weeks ago with the decision of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn versus Governor Cuomo out of New York. Now, praise God for the decision that came from the new Justice, Amy Coney Barrett. And frankly, she basically reaffirmed that the Constitution does exist and it's still valid. I'll tell you, for a long time, a lot of us have been really concerned that when it comes to our free exercise of religion, it is really just being thrown to the wayside, set aside to such a degree that, oh my gosh, are we ever going to be able to count on our Constitution to protect our religious and individual liberties? And so that was a very strong affirming yes. Now, the Ninth Circuit recently, a week or two ago, came out with a decision as well for one of the Calvary Chapels, Calvary Chapel, I believe it's Dayton. And in that case, the U.S. Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit took the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling and applied it to Nevada and said, you know, the orders, the governing orders that are applicable in Nevada for health and safety they're discriminatory. They're not neutral and generally applicable. And therefore, the Ninth Circuit affirmed the fact that those are unconstitutional. And they're unconstitutional because they allow casinos, and the governor had made all sorts of other accommodations for businesses, deemed them essential. Meanwhile, churches were limited in the attendance that were permitted, and often told you cannot meet indoors, et cetera, et cetera. And so the Ninth Circuit has done us a great favor. However, it's not so easy. And what we have found in the last week and a half since the decision came out from the United States Supreme Court, I'll just be plain. It's not a pretty picture. And it's not a pretty picture because particularly in California, New Jersey, Maryland, some of the other states that are controlled by Democrat governors are actually saying that the U.S. Supreme Court precedent is not applicable. And they're trying to distinguish. They're trying to still enforce these health orders that, quite frankly, are completely in violation of the United States Supreme Court, which means we have to continue battling. Now, I've also asked a couple other people to join us. I've asked Mike McClure. Mike, I don't know if you're on yet. Mike is in the middle of a legal battle, which I would presume most of you guys know. He's in San Jose, California, Northern District of California. It is one of the most liberal areas. It's just outside of San Francisco, and we have to deal with San Francisco-oriented judges, and the county of Santa Clara has been coming after him. And in spite of the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling, Since the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, the county of Santa Clara has sought an injunction. The county of Santa Clara has sought to hold Mike in contempt of court. And in the meantime, we've been defending him in each of those circumstances, arguing, Your Honor, not only has the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on these issues, but the Ninth Circuit has ruled on these issues. And so the state court judge says those cases are distinguishable. It's just shocking. So we are in a significant battle here in California. We're based in California. We're happy to help in other states as well with regard to your circumstances. But I can tell you that in California in particular, it's an extremely difficult situation because from San Diego all the way up north, it's a battle for churches to be able to meet indoors and meet just like other churches or other businesses are frankly allowed to meet. So let me see, Mike. Mike is not on yet. I am going, you know what I think the problem is? Mike, he may not have had the link. So I'm going to send him the link to get in here. And actually, okay. All right. So I'm just checking. Jake, it's in Mike's email now. Okay. Okay, so let's jump. I want to address. There's some insurance questions and there's legal questions, and I see Don McClure Sr. Is on as well. We got the McClure family. I feel like I've really come to know you guys. I'd welcome Don McClure Sr. maybe first if you want to just say a few words. I don't know. Oh, you're on mute, Don.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even know. Okay. I've just been listening. I didn't know I'm on this thing.
Well, I see you on the picture here, and I thought, I'm glad you didn't do anything that you would have been embarrassed. So you didn't. You've been sitting there.
Well, I'm not through yet. Well, first of all, Bob, thank you for all you're doing for the Calvaries around the country. You've been doing a lot for many. And so obviously we really appreciate that. And then personally, because the way you've jumped in San Jose, which has kind of become something, there's Santa Clara, as many may or may not know, I don't know, is probably the most liberal county in the United States. It's Governor Newsom's backyard, and it's the tech industry. And the health department there has got to be the most liberal and uncooperative. And because Michael has been meeting, he's never chosen him off. He's never wanted to fight with him. He's never taken on Newsom. He's never taken on the health department. He just wanted to preach and feed the people, which he just feels that's a biblical mandate. Jesus said, feed my sheep. And that's all he's been doing. But for that, because of the size of the church, they've singled him out. Although there are some others meeting, but they just seem to have really chosen him. They show up at virtually every activity that's going on, worship services, women's ministries, men's ministries, anything that's kind of going on, youth things, and finds them. They have no scale as to, okay, it's $1,000 a time, it's $5,000. They just pick a figure. They don't even have anything they're going by. It's just simply they are wanting to. They don't see at all that the church is a benefit or as a help or in anything. The health department and the county, they're supreme. So, and Michael, it was pretty mellow. he of my boys, as anybody who knows him is, but he's just decided, hey, we've got to deal with this. I'm just going to feed my people. And now they keep on. He had a court date, which you may reflect on, because obviously they wouldn't even let me in the room. But we got in the hallway. But anyway, then the judge said no witnesses. So you can fill in on that. But I think what the fines now totally are like $850,000. Does that sound correct, Bob?
I don't know the exact number, but they're well over $800,000 at this point. Santa Clara County is fining him $5,000 a day.
Yeah. And so they're just, but, hoping that obviously something legally is going to finally step in, but they've just felt, I'm going to minister to my people, period. And as anybody that's kind of followed it, the churches, every time I've been there a couple of times, you get up there, you sneeze, and the people applaud. They're so excited to meet, to be fed, and to worship, and it's like nothing I've ever seen in 50 years, to tell you the truth. So,
Hey, Don, let me ask you a question. I mean, it'd be, you're one of the original Calvary guys, and I know there's a lot of controversy over whether or not, whether to meet indoors, and not all Calvaries agree on the issue. And I wouldn't ever suggest that every Calvary chapel or every church itself should be meeting. I mean, if you have, 99% of your congregation, they're if they're all over 70 years old, that might not make sense to meet, because that's known to be the risk category, right, for this coronavirus. But by and large, everybody else, it's, there's really, the risk is minimal unless you have some significant serious comorbidities. But I'd like to ask you, what is your thought with regard to churches meeting indoors and Calvary chapels? I mean, you have a lot of younger guys here that are looking for some wisdom, probably.
Well, we've sent out an email that we never have done a follow-up, but basically every Calvary, the way we're set up, they're all individual 501c3 corporations, and the pastor and his leadership are responsible to the Lord, not to us essentially, but to the Lord. And we don't govern, we don't control. And as I have watched this, I don't know how many hundreds of conversations I've had since this thing began, but there are many churches that are in entirely different situations. We have a wide variety, some of which have been meeting in public, like in a school. They've been told they can't meet. I've been told that's questionable that they can even tell them they can't once they've leased it out. Or else they have a facility that's very limited itself. They really cannot spread out at all. And the building is small, and so there's various sizes and reasons that some churches really cannot logistically effectively, kind of come together, and they're having to find other ways to do it. Hopefully they're finding, whether Zoom, things like this, sending out daily things to encourage that people stay in touch. We're finding that the churches that have not worked really hard, extra hard, to stay in touch with their people, email them, send them things, find ways for them to gather, whether men for a breakfast someplace, and that they can do it or something. And they're the ones that are having the hardest time reopening and having people come back once that they have been shut down for a period of time. And that's a challenge. Michael is a little separate, different there, because the facility in San Jose is somewhere around 150,000 square feet. It's huge. And it's the balcony, and between it, the gymnasium. What?
They can seat 1,800 people, and the county was fining them when they had 400 people spread out across the sanctuary.
Yeah, and then they've gone to 2 services, and then they've spread out. They've got a gymnasium, they've got a fireside room, they've got all sorts of ways that they can really spread the people out. And so the county has made it pretty clear it has nothing, honestly, to do with social distancing, the ineffective way, or things like that. It really is. We don't want you meeting. And then they change the rules. The goalposts change literally weekly with them. I'm sure if Michael, if he gets on, is the guy to bring up. But you can't sing, and you can't do this. And so no matter what it is, they'll walk in and just issue another fine for whatever, and leave. And so
if we have Mike on the line yet. No.
Okay.
All right. So hey, we'll get a hold of him. He was looking for the link. I kind of threw him in at the very last minute and said, "Hey, Mike, will you join us?" And so he said, "Sure, send me the info." But all right. So I think we texted Mike the info, right, Jack? Okay, text him the info if you can. Okay. All right, so here we go. Let me jump. We're going to get back to the legal issues. And Don Senior, thank you. And I've asked Don McClure Jr., who does a lot of insurance work and specializes in working with churches. And one of the questions that a lot of folks say, they're questioning about whether or not insurance is going to provide coverage. So I think there's two categories of coverage here that Don, I'd like for you to address. It's a practical question. I hope that our decisions, the decisions that you all make are solely, and I'm sure it is, but solely based upon what the Lord's requiring of you, as opposed to whether insurance is going to provide you coverage. But this is important information. After this, I'll get back to the details on what's happening with some of the law and where we're headed. But Don, let's ask you two categories. What happens if someone comes and they slip and fall? The church is holding an indoor meeting, and assume that the county guidelines say you're not allowed to meet indoors, you can only meet outdoors. But the church violates the county guidelines. And I will throw it out there that, the U.S. Supreme Court has said what the law is. And, bottom line is in most instances, churches are permitted legally to meet indoors, but the local ordinance might say otherwise. The local county health order might say otherwise. So that's category number one. Someone slips and falls, they sue the church because they have a broken leg. And then the second category would be someone comes to church and they catch coronavirus and it's traced back to the church. Now, there's a big evidentiary question as to whether or not it can be proven that they got it from the church or not versus
Right.
someone at the church. But the fact is that with the contract tracing, there's a likelihood that they'll be able to do that. So, Mike, can you answer those two categories of questions?
You mean Don?
I'm sorry, Don. I'm getting
okay.
all my McClure friends mixed up. So
Yeah, you
Don
got too many
McClure
of us
Jr.
on here, right?
Yeah, you guys will.
Don McClure,
How'd this
sorry,
happen?
Junior. Go ahead.
Well, to answer your question, I would say 99% chance that the carriers that I work with will cover a slip and fall, misconduct, those types of things. Your D&O, those types of things could have issues as well. But the reason is what insurance carriers do is they'll say, well, the law says this, and this is in our rules. But the problem is so many of these carriers didn't really have pandemic type insurance written in their policy or not written in their, it's kind of like vague. So we had to get real clear. So one of my carriers I work with a lot, Guide One, we went back and forth when this first hit. And I said, listen, these churches are paying a premium and they're going to be paying, some are paying, $50,000 to $40,000 a month in insurance premiums. And you're going to sit there and say, you know what, we're not going to pay insurance for this. They didn't have a stance. So I said, they're paying for something. And so what I have got my carriers to agree on, and they have done this with a number of other brokers as well, is it's kind of what they're going by, is they're saying, okay, if somebody does slip and fall, or if there's a misconduct situation or something of that nature that's named in the policy, then it will be covered. But the problem is, well, what's COVID related? When it gets to COVID, anything COVID related, all of them have said, we don't offer that because that's pandemic insurance. Now, if you were lucky enough to have pandemic insurance before this all hit, number one, I don't know if I want to see your renewal rates. And number two is you're really lucky in that sense because you can't find pandemic insurance anywhere right now. So the thing is that, like you said earlier, Bob, if you have a group of, your majority of your churches over 70, then you may need to rethink how you meet and where you meet and put in some really good restrictions that are in place and follow the law in that sense. But, we're all grown-ups and I think we're all able to make our own decisions in a sense. And so I personally attend John Randall's church, and John's done a phenomenal job because he holds services outside and also inside. So people have, that option if they want to do that. Now, I realize not all churches have that option. Some areas it's very cold. Some areas it's really warm and it's getting worse. as we through the winter months. So what do we do? So that's really a question that's pointed back to you. But as far as the insurance falls in place, if there is a misconduct or a car accident of some sort or a volunteer accident, you should be covered. And the reason I say should is because every claim that I've received, and I've received probably about 45 claims in the last 5 months, they've all been either paid out or working through the process because none of them were COVID related. One was actually a slip and fall. One was another medical issue on campus. So I hope that answers your question. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, Don, that does. So I think it's important also to point out that in a couple circumstances, we have some of the policies actually provide legal defense coverage.
Correct.
Where in these circumstances, it might be limited to a certain number. I think for Mike McClure, for your brother, for you also insure Rob McCoy at Godspeak. Mm-hmm. And we've been defending Rob as well. And one of the things is that they actually help to cover help provide fees for the lawyers, right?
Right. Yes, and there's a cap usually to that, and we can always apply for that.
You want to be on Saturday, but
so far we've been somewhat successful. I think we're getting some feedback from somebody there. You know what? I'm guessing it's my brother Mike because he has 16 kids, and they're probably in the background.
Competition. He's just trying to talk over there or something.
Oh, there he is. He's muted now. But yes, that is correct. So any church that has, you want to call your broker and you want to say, hey, look, we want some legal help here. And I know, Bob, that you've done a phenomenal job at doing a lot of pro bono stuff for churches and just helping us get through this. So, as an insurance guy, and then, I know my family and everybody else in the church are very thankful for what you've done for a lot of the churches and appreciate what you've done. But as far as helping you guys out, because there is cost, there's flights, there's time, there's I don't know how many lawyers you have at your office, Bob, but we all have to eat. So, I mean, you've spent a lot of time on this. So yes, if there is a claim like this that you guys want to open, email me or email your broker, call me or call your broker and ask them, say, hey, is there some kind of fee? And I know my carriers, what their response is, and most brokers should, so they should be able to give you the answer right on the spot.
Yeah, that's great. And although, for example, we're providing our services pro bono to the church, we've actually, the two I haven't tapped into yet. I've just been too busy. I haven't even been able to go to the insurance companies and ask for, send our bills to them. But they will actually.
Yeah, I've been waiting for those, by the way.
I know. I'm so sorry, but I'm trying to keep your brother out of jail.
Okay.
And literally, folks, we kind of laugh, make a joke about it, but it's serious. And
yep.
we've been so busy. But there is some coverage that actually, I think it's, it might cover a small fraction of what a lawyer would normally charge, but that helps us to continue doing what we're doing. So I appreciate it. And it goes into our nonprofit. So thank God for that. But let's so insurance, I think we've hit on insurance. I want to point something out. And before I have Mike get on and say something, I was just back east, back in Florida with at a conference, and I was with Pastor Rob McCoy and a number of other pastors and some leaders that I'm telling you, it was very exciting. There was a big, large group of young people who have come together. Many of them are young Christians, and it's actually put on by Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA. And there were thousands of young people there. And my understanding, it appeared that most of them are Christians. And it's almost as though when I was in high school, the alternative, the rebellious ones were punk rockers. Well, now the rebellious ones are these young conservatives who are often Christians and who are standing up for their faith. It was just really awesome to see this movement. But we're in a monumental battle, and I received an email from a friend, and it says, I'll just read the headline to you. Democratic memo declares rise of white Christian nationalism is a national security threat. rise of white Christian nationalism as a national security threat. Now, that was put forward by a political action committee backed by a number of congressional people. And should Joe Biden take office, I know Kamala Harris's propensity when she was the Attorney General here in California. They really came after Christians. They came after pro-life clinics. When Obama was the president and Biden was vice president, they came after our nonprofit, Advocates for Faith and Freedom. They did a full audit on us when they were basically they were harassing conservative Christian organizations. One of my lawyers who was in the newspaper a bit at that time, she had a full audit. The chairman of my board had an audit. My partner and I were audited by the California State Bar. The State Board of Equalization audited us. One of my corporations was audited. And there's even more that I could tell you. But, the reality of it is all of that happened within about a 3-month period. And so it's concerning. Where are we at and where are we going? And so I can say that there's going to be an announcement that we're going to be making with Rob and others that the churches who are saying we're going to stay open. I don't know what the next era brings, but I can say that it's concerning, and you guys are going to need to stick together. We're all going to need to stick together. Mike, would you join in? And I asked you, Mike, just to say a few words of encouragement. I hear you.
There
you are.
Sorry, I'm on the road, so I'm not getting a good connection here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mike.
A few words of encouragement. Is that what you asked?
Yes.
The words of encouragement are: we know who wins in the end. That Revelation 19 tells us that Jesus is coming back on a white horse, and we're going to be with him. I can't say enough for all those that I know. Thanks that are praying for us, but also just that are open. I can't encourage everyone enough to say the blessings of being open every week are one.
Mike, we lost you. Bad connection. Okay. Since we've lost you, you might be coming back. Maybe if you get into a better spot, we'll bring you back in, okay? Because I really would like to hear from you. Folks, Mike was in a position, it was a week and a half or so ago now, that we went into state court and they were seeking to hold him in contempt. And we didn't know whether or not the judge was going to put him in jail for violation, because the judge the week earlier had said something to the effect, I want to make it very clear, I take my orders very seriously, is what the judge told us. And so we didn't know what was going to happen. And instead of putting him in jail, the court fined Mike an additional $55,000, he and his church. Now, that's on top of the over close to $850,000 in fines that the county has lodged against them. And the fines are, one, the result of something they call a social distancing protocol that the county requires them to fill out online, where they have to agree to accept all of the requirements, and then they could hit send. Mike says, I can't agree to all of those requirements because there's certain things in there that they're requiring us to be the enforcer of masks, the enforcer of social distancing. He says, there's certain things that we cannot comply and agree that we are going to demand or require. We were talking in preparation for the contempt hearing, and one of the things that, I just remember, especially being a young person growing up in the Calvary movement, of the song, come just as you are. The hippies came, the hippie generation came without shoes. And now are you going to turn someone away from church because they don't have a mask on? I don't think so. So these are all big issues that are interesting, and we'll try to address. Mike, are you back in a spot where we can hear you? Yes,
I
we
think,
are.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So go ahead and continue, Mike.
I just want to say thanks, Bob, for all your help. It's a blessing just to know that there's a lawyer out there that really loves the Lord and wants to help. And we're really honored to have all that you've done, and Mariah and your team. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a team effort. I want you to know that. And, you know, there's a small, very small contingent of lawyers around the country that do what we do. So
Going to be challenges, and every county's different. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
But I just want to say, you know, we should do the most we possibly can to minister to God's sheep. We're either pastors or we're hirelings, Jesus said. And so we need to be feeding God's sheep. That's what they need right now. And I can't tell you just how blessed people are that we're opening. I get letters and emails from all over the country, and just people that are blessed. And I know they're
Sorry, we don't have a good connection.
either have, and doing whatever you can, either in parking lot or whatever you can. It's just giving people hope. You know, in California here, they've taken away what Easter, Thanksgiving, and now Christmas. And people they're looking for hope, and we shine brighter than ever before. So it's a blessing to serve with all of you.
Amen. Okay, let me address a few things. So so far with what we've said, let me come back and try to summarize. So the U.S. Supreme Court has made very clear that if there are quote unquote essential businesses that are allowed to be open in your state under the state guidelines, so that's anything from a bicycle shop and nail salons to Costco or other types of uses. The Supreme Court said if they're making choices between who's essential and who's not, they really need to give churches the right to meet indoors just like the rest of them. What that means is that, let's say across the board, the county health orders say that, you know, Costco must limit their capacity to 25%. The grocery store must limit their capacity to 30%, and the retail shops and all these other places. And let's say they have this cap on the total number of people that are allowed to be inside a building, and it's based upon the building occupancy. Then churches have to be treated the same way. So in this case, Costco's 25%, grocery stores are 30%. Let's say you need to be permitted to have up to 30% of your church occupancy. And that would mean that you could have, you know, 30% in your sanctuary, 30% in various classrooms, maybe in your lobby, etc. And so that's the essence of the decision by the Supreme Court. And virtually every state in the country allows people to go out for quote unquote essential services. So that, you know, church is essential, and that's the point of the Supreme Court ruling, I think, really, when it comes down to it in the end. The Ninth Circuit came down with one of the first rulings, again affirming this point, and that was as it relates to Nevada. We do know that you know, I know in New Mexico the governor's really come down hard and put some even greater restrictions on there. So every county is different, and every state is different. And so I can't give you some overarching statement that says anything other than you have to be treated at least as good as businesses that are allowed to be open in your state and in your county. Okay. Now, one of the questions that arises is as it pertains to masks and social distancing. That was not decided by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that the Calvary, or excuse me, the Archdiocese, the synagogue, and the Supreme Court case, that they were social distancing. They were following the protocols effectively. And so, you know, whether or not we're going to win one day on this issue of whether, you have to enforce social distancing, whether or not you have to enforce the wearing of masks. That's yet to be determined. I can tell you one of our cases that we're preparing this week, that we're going to be filing an emergency injunction because a doctor in Oregon did not enforce masks in his clinic when he only treated COVID patients at the end of the day. Well, they took his mask away, his license away, because he wasn't wearing a mask, which is astonishing. And the reality of it is he spoke at a Trump rally, and 2 days later, they began an investigation. So things are going to continue are going to get heated up. The safest thing for you is, I can say from an overarching perspective, if you have the right to meet indoors just like anybody else. And clearly, if you enforce mask requirements and you enforce social distancing, how you do that exactly is questionable. But if you, quote unquote, enforce those things, you have every legal right to be in there. And it would be virtually impossible. Well, I shouldn't say impossible. It'd be very difficult for any county to win a lawsuit if you had to bring a lawsuit or sought an injunction. But now, they're still fighting it. In California, they're saying the Supreme Court ruling doesn't apply. So we got a battle here. We've got a battle in other states. Let me bring in Jen Bursch, and please write in any questions that you have, and we'll get to your questions here shortly. Jen? This is my law partner, Jen. And Jen, do you have anything you want to add to what we've talked about?
I don't think so. I'm happy to answer questions with you, but I think you've covered everything.
Okay. Jake, can we pop up Q&As? Okay, so looks like we just have 2 questions so far. The first question, how do the liberal states circumvent the Supreme Court ruling? The Supreme Court is the precedent-setting constitution enforcing body of our land. Amen. Jen.
Well, they shouldn't be. They definitely aren't legally allowed to do that. I think that's what's interesting about what Pastor Mike is going through up in San Jose, and we've seen Rob McCoy as well. And we've, across the state, some of these counties in the state itself are just refusing to acknowledge the recent Supreme Court ruling. I will note that, interestingly, Los Angeles County, which has been one of the most difficult, on the 19th December 19th, issued a new policy that says that churches can meet indoors and outdoors without specific capacity limitations, as long as they're social distancing and doing masks. As an interesting order, because at the end of the day, the state is still saying no. So the county order shouldn't supersede the state, but if the county is not going to enforce the state order on a practical level, it should help churches in LA County quite a bit. Obviously, we'd love to see something like that in Pastor Mike's case and others across the state, that the counties aren't taking those types of actions, but they should be. And that's one of the briefs that we're working on right now, really are focusing on all the new law and where the courts should be, and pressing back on that. We're working on some drafting for Pastor Mike today, actually, that is really focused on that, to try to get them to make some changes, because they should be coming in line with the U.S. Supreme Court and really the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit has vacated a couple opinions as well based on the diocese case, and we're still not seeing it. But that's not super unusual for us because we are so liberal. But I expect that it will slowly come into line. And the move from Los Angeles this weekend was definitely a big change.
I think one of the things that we're going to start seeing, though, is things are going to be breaking up a little bit across the country. We're going to have zones where we have significant enforcement efforts and attempts to ignore the Supreme Court ruling, and we're going to have those zones where, more likely in the South, in the 10th Circuit, where they're happy to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling, and they're going to live with it. Colorado, actually, interestingly, the governor there just issued an order after the Supreme Court ruled, said no limits on church attendance at all. So very interesting situation. So I think we're gonna be coming down. If you're in one of the more difficult states, guys, we're gonna have to continue battling. So one of the other things I want to address real quick before I get to the next question. One of the other issues is that landlords are feeling the pressure because local cities and the counties have the ability to go to property owners who have churches who are renting property. And they have the ability to go to the landlord and say, you need to make sure that these people are following social distancing guidelines. You need to make sure that they're wearing masks. You need to not allow them to meet. And so what I've seen in some instances, not yet for any Calvary chapels, but, actually I take it back. There was with Pastor Joe and Joe Pettick down in Huntington Beach, Calvary of the Harbor. The landlord there came and said, we want you to know that you're obligated to follow the social distancing guidelines and the caps on attendance and et cetera, et cetera. And so we had to send a letter back to the landlord explaining them that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled and that they're allowed to meet, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing for some churches in San Diego. And I'm sure we're seeing that in many other places as well. So that's another line of defense I think that we're going to have to make is with landlords. I don't have a specific answer. There's no general overarching statement other than what we need to be able to do is go back to them and just simply say, U.S. Supreme Court's ruled on this, depending on what circuit you're in, we'll be addressing those issues as well. Let's go to the next question here. Does participation in the COVID vaccine affect coverage? Do you see churches being forced to comply in taking the MRC5 fetal tissue component? So many are opposed to. Wow. I was listening to Pastor J.D. Farag in Hawaii on his prophecy update just this last Sunday, and the Sunday before. I think he came out very strongly against this vaccine. I am, there's some real serious, legitimate religious objections to the vaccine. Now, let's answer the first question. Does participation in the COVID-19 vaccine affect coverage? Don McClure Jr., can you answer that question? Have you heard anything from the insurance companies that if there's a mandate that comes out and says, hey, churches, you're allowed to meet, we're not going to prevent you from meeting, but you have to ensure everyone took the vaccine in your church?
There has not been one carrier to comment on this yet. I think they're still looking at it, and they're seeing that some of the vaccines are having, adverse reactions or some type of situation where it's not, it's hurting. So I think it's kind of a wait and see, but there's no stance yet. But I will keep bugging our carriers on that.
Hey, Jen, how about from a legal perspective? What are your thoughts on that? You're on mute, Jen.
Sorry. It's interesting. I was actually reading what the EEOC sent out over the weekend, which is that private employers, including churches, I presume, can in fact force employees to get the vaccine, but there is a religious exemption.
The EEOC is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who is a federal agency that governs over federally related employment questions. And most of the states really fall in line with the EEOC. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, and that's really what's interesting about it. It was funny because I was talking with a couple lawyers just on Friday about the vaccine, and a couple of them who I highly respect said, oh, no way will they make, can private employers force or nonprofits force their employees to get it? And then like the next day, the EEOC said, yeah, you can force your employees to get it, which is a unique thing. We've never really seen anything like that. I mean, you look at like drug testing and stuff, and even that is super fraught with all kinds of issues. But they are saying that you can force it. However, there's a religious exemption in the EEOC stuff. So if you don't want to get it, you can avoid it, which is, at least that's good. That's a little concerning to me if you live in one of the more liberal states. If you're in the South or in kind of one of the better states, that's probably that they'll probably stick with the EOC. Out here in California, and I know in New York, the vaccine laws no longer have religious exemptions attached to them generally for other vaccines. So it's a little disconcerting to see them say that you can force private employers, or private employers can and should force it. But again, the EOC said they can enforce it. They didn't say they have to. They can. They can force them to take the vaccine with a religious exemption, but they're not saying that they have to. And that's what I really would be shocked to see, some type of mandated vaccine program for adults across the country. We've definitely never seen anything like that legally, but it's an interesting issue, and it's definitely coming. It'll be interesting to see what the insurance companies do with all that.
I need to clarify what you just said. So the EEOC said that private employers are allowed to enforce the vaccine requirement, but they also have to respect the religious exemption that's available.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, well, let's, my thoughts on that, and, I'm sure there are a lot of pastors who have differing perspectives on this as well, but I think this is a real serious question, and I'm a little, I would not be shocked to see laws like this passed in California, Colorado, and some more liberal states, New Mexico, as it pertains to requiring people to have the vaccine in order to go into certain zones. So for example, there's been reports that that's what they're going to be doing in Israel. Over in Israel, they're going to have these zones where if you have the vaccine, you are allowed you have freedom of travel. But if you don't take the vaccine, you're only allowed in a limited amount of zones. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that here. And, as Calvary guys, I think we probably all look to the end times and see this as a potential interesting event that could happen. Also, let me just throw in there. We just argued the case of Doman versus Vimeo. Vimeo is the video streaming platform that it's like a competitor to YouTube. And our client, who is a pastor and a former homosexual, his entire account was deleted, and we filed a lawsuit. It's in New York. It's out of the Second Circuit. The federal judge agreed with the Ninth Circuit and said, big tech has the right to discriminate against persons based upon their race, religion, color, and creed. And that's shocking because no business is allowed to do that. But why should big technology have the right to do that? And the answer is there's this federal law that has been misinterpreted that provides such immunity. Well, the Second Circuit appears to be agreeing with that. The reality of it is that big tech has the ability at any point in time to stop your live streaming if they don't agree with you, if they don't like you, if they decide that you're too conservative. This goes even so far as and this is shocking, guys, but consider Amazon, Apple Pay, online credit cards. This immunity is granted to all of them. We are so close to, I think, the end times here. When looking at these events, it's shocking to imagine that the laws in place today that makes it legal to discriminate against Christians because of their faith. Okay, let's go to the next question. Here we go from Mike. Honest question. We are in New Mexico. If we refuse to enforce masks and social distancing, will we have trouble getting legal help? We live in a very rural farming area, and even if I wanted to enforce masks and social distancing, the people would not observe those things. Okay, so no, let me say yes, you can get legal help. It's difficult, and I understand. This is the type of case that needs to be fought. because you should not have to be the enforcer. You should be a pastor that says you make recommendations. You can recommend social distancing. You can recommend masks. But I tell you, I think that you have the legal right, and you should have a legal defense to this as well. And we'd be happy to contemplate that. I'll be honest. A lot of us lawyers who are the few organizations that are doing what we do, man, we're so buried. But please call us, because if we can help you, we will. Jen, do you want to answer this question? Jen, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't know that I have anything to add on that one.
Oh, okay. Let's see the next question. What are we to do, or what are we to expect if we don't comply with the no singing ordinance in Washington State? Okay, that's right now we have a lawsuit against the governor of California because he has a ban on singing in California. And we have argued that. We're waiting for a decision from the district court. We don't know what's going to happen. Two of our Calvary Chapel friends are involved in this litigation. Calvary Chapel of Ukiah and Calvary Chapel Fort Bragg. And I don't know if you guys, Kevin, Les, if you guys are on, but thank you guys for joining and being a part of this litigation, because we need to push back on this. It's honestly, it's a shocking thing to hear orders telling you how you can or cannot worship. That if you do worship, if you do sing outdoors, you have to wear masks. It is going so overboard. And so anyways, we'll see what happens with the judge in that ruling. You very well could find yourself being fined or some enforcement action being taken against you because you are singing. I would battle back against that. We already have the one case. It will wind up in the Ninth Circuit. It'll wind up at the U.S. Supreme Court. So let's see what happens. If you get any challenges because you are singing, contact us. Let us know. But that is one of the most egregious orders that I think we've even seen, other than, churches can't meet at all. So I hope that answered your question. Next question. We are a small church in Fairfield, California with 7 employees. Workers' comp required employees to wear masks in office or will not cover us. Don McClure Jr., that sounds like you.
I think that's a church we insure. In fact, why don't I talk to Joseph later on that, because that is a letter. If that is being told to you, I would like to know who said that to you, because that is not the case. If they're requiring workers to wear masks, send me that information, because that's the first I've heard of it. And I believe we cover you guys. So we'll look at that.
And so, Don, are you saying that generally it's your understanding that that workers' comp insurance is not regularly requiring that of their companies?
So I think what's happening, I think, because I've heard a little bit about this, but not with our churches or nonprofits. But what I think is happening is the WCRB is getting involved, and they're actually requesting some of these things, but worker comp companies are pushing back, because it really is an issue. Because what doesn't make sense to me here is if you have a work comp issue and you go to work and you're not wearing a mask in the office and somebody comes down with it, well, it's already not going to be covered because it's COVID related. So work comp, I've got to talk to some of the carriers to get back to you on that. But that's news to me, because if that's the case, that's not correct from what I've read from all our carriers and what I've been told. But the state could be getting involved now, and I think that's what's happening. So Joseph, why don't you and I talk in a little bit, and I'll email you.
Yeah, that's an interesting issue. Jen, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know a lot about that specifically. I've not heard of that. I guess I don't know of any other churches that have been told that. But
what do you think from a legal perspective? I mean, there's certainly a free exercise argument that, wearing a mask is, especially for people in church. One of the arguments we've made with Mike McClure's case is that, you're counseling people, you are meeting with people. One part of your job is to try to read people and see the expression on their face, to know whether they're hurting, whether or not they're happy. It's a tough thing in just working with people. I think, forcing masks, we have an argument that it is a violation of our ability to, engage in our faith. But Jen,
I guess one of the things I'd ask is it masks or face coverings? Because I do think some of those arguments that you just referenced when you're starting to talk about face shields, if that's considered to be acceptable, I mean, those are clear. So it's at least a lot easier to communicate. I know a lot of the schools are using face shields because of that. And because obviously the kids need to be able to see, my daughter's in first grade and she can't see the sounds coming out of the teacher's mouth, and that's really a problem. I think that argument that you're making right now, I don't know if the workers' comp, I don't think that should be a workers' comp requirement. And I'm sure that Don will look into that, but I just really haven't heard that yet. And I've talked to a lot of churches that have contacted their workers' comp and asked those questions. So I do think that's a little bit of a unique one.
okay, let's jump to the next question. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But in Nevada, where they are now allowing us to have a 25% capacity rather than a 50-person cap, I still view this as a loss. That means 75% of our capacity is not allowed. The First Amendment prohibits this, doesn't it? Jen, why don't you take a shot at this one first?
Well, this gets to whether it's consistent across the board with other uses. That's why the court went that direction, because those were the cap or the capacity limitations placed on other businesses. That's what was so atrocious the first time around for that church, because literally casinos could have more people. So the
You're
court
talking
at
about-
least.
Just a second. When you say that church, you're speaking of the case that went up to the Ninth Circuit. That the Ninth Circuit ruled in the Calvary Chapel Dayton case. Go ahead.
Yeah, Calvary Chapel Dayton.
Which is out of Nevada. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that I think it's a difficult call. Yes, I believe that the First Amendment should extend past these significant capacity restrictions because of the substantial burden component, and also potentially the Establishment Clause. I know that sounds like a weird one, but the government is supposed to stay out of religion on both ends. How you read the Establishment Clause depends, but there's definitely good case law out there that suggests that the government cannot entangle itself excessively in religion, even if it's telling you not to exercise your religion. And that's how they're excessively entangling themselves. So I think there are good legal arguments that the capacity restriction of 25% is a violation of the First Amendment. That isn't the case that was brought up. The Nevada case that you're referencing, that was the fact pattern that was brought up. So I really think that part of this is that strategically, now that we're starting to make inroads, we need to kind of press the boundaries as attorneys and see how broadly we can get the courts to rule in our favor, particularly when you look at the United States Supreme Court and you've got Barrett now on the court and definitely favoring defending religious freedoms in this area. So I think it's something that we need to work on expanding. For so long, I think we were losing, even though we shouldn't have been, that I think attorneys just started to take smaller looks at it to try to just get anything, if that makes any sense. And now that we're seeing that movement, from my perspective, I think we need to try to get a better look at it and try to expand it, because I agree the First Amendment should protect more than just that.
Yeah, so effectively, our view is that the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn case from the U.S. Supreme Court is a building block, and that based on that decision, we want to be able to expand that case so that one, it protects churches from having to be the enforcer of masks, the enforcer of social distancing. Mike, I saw an email, or I saw a comment that you had up there that you don't believe you should be the enforcer. I agree. I mean, you shouldn't have to tell people that they turn them away because they're not wearing a mask any more than you would turn someone away for not wearing shoes. Okay. Next question here is, where can we as Christians refer to for religious exemption? So that really goes back to Jen, the EEOC exemption that you were referring. I doubt you know it off the top of your head, the code section that provides it, but go ahead.
I don't know it off the top of my head. I will look while we continue to go, and hopefully I can put it in the chat function so that you guys can see that. It just came out, so, but I'll look for it, yeah.
Okay. Next, can we refuse entry to mask enforcement officers? In other words, county code enforcement officers to the church, since it is private property and there is no crime being committed? The answer is yes. I mean, you have the ability to tell the county that unless they have a warrant or a court order to enter your premises, they are not allowed onto your property to do any sort of inspection in terms of COVID-19. So you have that legal right to say that. Now, that typically gets them very angry and sometimes causes more grief than it's worth, depending on your location and where you're at. For example, in some counties where they have no desire to enforce the county orders, where the sheriff has come out, where the county district attorney and the boards of supervisors of the county or the leaders of your community, they're saying, we don't want to enforce this. In a lot of those instances, it might make more sense to let them in. They might give you a citation and then they do nothing else. But sometimes when you prevent them from coming in, they'll fine you, for example, in the county of Santa Clara, or no, excuse me, not Santa Clara. I think it's Los Angeles County. We were working with Jeff Johnson at Calvary Chapel Downey, and they came and said, look, if you don't allow us in, we're going to fine you $500 for impeding our access. Now, whether they can legally do that or not is a different question. But yeah, you should have the right to be able to deny entry unless they have a warrant or a court order to be able to come in into your premises. So I hope that answers that question, and I'll encourage you to use some discretion. Next, do churches have to enforce health orders for masks and social distancing? Okay, so let me kind of go over that a bit again. You know, that has not yet been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. It has not been decided by any federal court of appeal that I'm aware of. And the reality of it is that one thing that we can clearly say is that if in your state or your county, it has health orders and it requires masks and social distancing, but it doesn't require it for people in other business settings, then arguably, based upon the current U.S. Supreme Court precedent, you don't have to require it in the church setting either, okay? This is argument. I'm not telling you there's no clear established law on this point. So arguably, you should have that right if any other business, any other essential business does not have to require masks. You shouldn't have to either, and you shouldn't have to be the enforcer. So I think that's a pretty conservative statement to make based upon the existing law. But that law is going to be decided down the road here as well. There's going to be a few cases where this is at issue. Now, just that really requires an in-depth look at the varying orders that are applicable in your specific county, in your specific state. So please take that we have to look at that first before we can give you before we can tell you what the law is in your particular circumstance, okay? If you're in one of the states that says, hey, wear masks even in your own house. I don't know if you've seen some of those recommendations. You know, in those states, they probably require masks of everybody at all times. So it might not be so easy to make the argument there. But there's also a free exercise argument that, you know, forcing someone to wear a mask in worship. There's, you know, come before the Lord with your faces unveiled, things of that nature in scripture that we could rely on. So I think we've got a free exercise argument there as well. Okay, let's see. Do we have, that's the end of the questions.
Bob, can you hear me, Bob?
Yes, I can, Don.
I've got an appointment that I've already moved that I've got to go to. A couple things I would like to say to the guys is that, number one, be encouraged. This is a time, I think, in church history that we've never approached quite like this in America. I think a lot of the other world, I mean, I go to Africa, South America, Central America, and where there's tremendous religious oppression and all sorts of things going on, and very, very difficult times for a variety of reasons. This is new to us because we are so used to our freedoms. We're used to having a government that supports us, that we work hand in hand with. I've been, you know, I mean, historically, they love the church. We help health, we help socially, we help, you know, the society. And now we've become so liberal as a country that the county health department, no, we don't need you. We take care of human health and things. And meantime, we've got tremendous things going on socially of alcoholism, drug addiction, suicides, you know, family disorder in a great way. And so I would, number one, that you guys be encouraged to find every possible way you can to be meeting with your church, to be feeding them at the best discretion and wisdom that you have for your situation. And they're all different there within it. In Michael's case in San Jose, they can do this. They've got the space. They've got every reason to be able, and it's just this, the government being obnoxious about it. But also, though, I've talked to many Calvaries that are meeting under the radar. They haven't bothered them. They've been meeting and carrying on and worshiping as usual, and they're not being affected. They haven't hit the radar screen. They're, and probably, I don't know of other churches in Santa Clara that they're after, but there's a number meeting up there. And they're just know that Michael's, well, they're using him as a scapegoat. But so I would just say, guys, and be encouraged, feed your people, reach out to them, and in every way you can. And whether, again, like Michael was in a parking lot for a while, did other things until they realized we can fulfill all sorts of things indoors. So be encouraged about that. And secondly, to find ways to contact your people, to be in touch with them, prayer ministries, women's gatherings, as you're able to do them, children, meeting in parks, whatever it is, to find ways to gather them together, because I'm hearing a lot of guys as they're trying to get their churches back. Once they've been closed for a period of time, they're very reluctant, or they've gone other places. They've found other ministries that are feeding them, or they've just settled into online. And I think that's a disaster to me, in the sense of, if people don't find a home and don't find, when this thing is over, they're just, statistics are terrible. 28% of evangelicals read their Bible before this thing started. And a recent poll, 22%. They just did another one. Only it's actually dropped during this time of Bible reading. And that's a terrible thing to hear. So be encouraged, minister to your people, find ways to do it, get together with your other pastors around, encourage one another. We're seeing finally, I've been to a number of pastors' gatherings in the last months where they just decided we're going to get together, find ways to do it. And they're not doing anything with somebody that comes together for a day or two and on any number. So I would encourage wherever you are around the country to be doing that. And so, again, Bob, I want to thank you for all you're doing. I didn't know that. I mean, it's kind of nice to see my sons. I didn't know any of us were going to be on. I didn't know I was going to be on. But anyway, I just, it's time to be bold. Find every way you can to meet with your people. I encourage you, if the facility there, and again, the age of your people, you don't have a high risk population, or you're able to, those that do come, suggest here's over here, here's an area where if you're a higher risk, wear a mask, sit over here. We'll have a closed circuit TV in that room for you, and or other ways to meet and have your people. You will find they will be thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be fed, to worship, to be together. It means an incredible amount. So God bless all you guys out there, and minister to your people.
Thanks, John. We have some churches. I understand you got to go, so feel free to exit, and we'll be closing here shortly. We have some churches who are actually doing one service where it's all social distancing, masks, all the sanitation, everything that needs to be done. And then what they do is they have another service where they don't adhere to social distancing and masks. And so they really try to give options like that for different people to be able to come to church. I think that's a pretty compassionate, sensitive way of going about things, because I'm sure not everybody in your congregation is on the same page. So hopefully that helps. Well, it's 1:15. We will make this available. It's recorded. So I think we should have the ability to send this out in a link. I know we had about 115, 120 Calvary pastors that were signed up. I don't think we ever got that high in the number. So we'll send it out to everybody who was on the list, and you can forward this on to your other pastor friends if you'd like. You're welcome to do that. And with that, hey, if I can just pray for all of you, I'd appreciate that. And we'll close it out here. All right, Heavenly Father, thank you for these pastors who are ministering in such an unprecedented time. Lord, thank you for this era that we live in, that we are able to see things come true, and prophecy. Our lifetime is so filled with prophecy that's been fulfilled, from Israel becoming a nation to so many other things. Thanks for revealing your truths to us. And God, I just pray that you'll give courage to all these pastors, especially some of these ones like the pastor in rural New Mexico, where maybe it feels a bit lonely sometimes. Lord, I pray that you will come alongside all of us, all the pastors. Give us wisdom, give them understanding on how they should best go about ministering your gospel. Lord, I just pray that your gospel would flourish at this time when things are becoming more and more difficult. Lord, thank you for blessing us. Thank you for Calvary Chapel. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, everybody, thank you. And please do not hesitate to contact us at our Advocates for Faith and Freedom. Our website is faith-freedom.com. It's in the chat. Also, you could reach us through our law firm, which is tylerbursch.com, tylerbursch.com. That's in the chat. You are welcome to phone us at 888-588-6888. Again, that's in the chat, but it is 888-588-6888. So God bless you. We're here for you, and we want to support you to the best of our ability. And may the Lord be with you. Merry Christmas.